Good morning and welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be talking about the science behind the sand fruit, or the Suna no Mi. Let's go! Okay, so like what I always like to do is we like to cover what is technically sand. And the most common component of sand is silicon dioxide in the form of quartz. The Earth's land masses are made up of rocks and minerals including quartz, feldspar and mica. Little side note, mica is actually used in a lot of capacitors for electrical purposes, if you just random information if you really wanted to know. And weathering processes such as wind, rain and freezing/thawing cycles break down these rocks and minerals into smaller grains, therefore producing sand. This stuff is absolutely insane, and this is why Crocodile's devil fruit is very overpowered as the Logia type devil fruit. I class it like really highly on my charts, and the shown abilities he is actually able to portray in his devil fruit goes as follows. I selected a few because he has so many. But there is the Desert Spada, or the Treasured Sword of the Desert. And this is where he's able to actually just completely cut a massive slice from you. And this is actually done by using the actual quartz or the silicon in his weapon, in his blade, back into the real world here. He could actually produce some form of blade with the sand projected at a high speed. This is because the multiple little shards could all be built up into like a blade formation, and we actually use sand in order to do cleaning, so to speak, using a sand blaster in order to remove little bits of crap. But it produced at an even higher velocity, it could actually cut you and or hurt you. The next ability he's actually shown to use is called the Bar-Jan, or the crescent-shaped sand dune. And this is where he produces a slice mark in a crescent shape, and this is where he's able to draw out all of the moisture from his opponents, making them a withered husk of them former selves. This is why I absolutely love this devil fruit, is just the ability of draining all of the moisture out of someone, because that's just overpowered at the end of the day. Because if you think about it, if you could just remove all the water from someone, they're practically near on dead. So yeah, it's a pretty good way of actually killing someone. This actually goes on very well with just defeating people in general, is just remove their moisture and they're practically incapacitated, because not only are you drawing the moisture from their muscles and all that jazz to keep them moving, but you're actually drawing the moisture from their brain as well, so they're not going to be able to think at all. You theoretically actually kill someone in real life if you drew every bit of moisture from their body, as the anime portrays that they still have some main ability of being able to move somewhat. That gives rise to believe there is a little bit of moisture left in. But if it's to remove all of the moisture out of something, is to practically just kill someone and or mummify them. He does have the ability of also in the real world be able to just mummify someone with his sand abilities. Okay, and so the last ability that is actually shown to actually use is Sables, and that is basically a sandstorm. He can create sandstorms. Who would have thought the guy who had the Logia ability of being able to use sand, produce sand, and is sand, could produce a sandstorm? But yes, he can produce a sandstorm. But let's go into his possible abilities, because that's what we like to actually talk about. So, he could theoretically produce glass, and this is because of all the silicon dioxide within him, as he is practically sand, and the most common thing in sand is silicon dioxide, which comes in the form of quartz, but could be actually melted down into glass. Now, this could be done in a numerous amount of ways, where he can actually spin the sand in his hand, as he is shown to do in the anime, at high velocity, and then cause friction in order to produce a lot of heat in order to actually melt it into a blade or actually produce just some form of glass fighting abilities. Now, glass is obviously fragile, but it can do a lot of damage. Number one to self, my actual thumb. I actually picked up a piece of glass the other day and it sliced straight through my thumb. Lovely days. I had to get some like weird, not stitches, but stitches, so to speak. I think they're called like steri strips or something. But other than that he could produce some real brittle and also shattering abilities using glass in order to fight with, and therefore produce some real nasty results for his opponents. Therefore, he could actually use those types of glass abilities against Luffy and then be able to slice him up if he really wanted to. This could actually go hand in hand with producing weird stuff with his like glass abilities. Like he could literally, if he can control sand and he could produce enough heat with the friction of that sand spinning around so much and then form that glass, he could pretty much make a nice glass for himself. So you never know, he could make all of his crystalware like just for him and he wouldn't have to pay a dime, you know? That's one upside of having the sand fruit, I guess. You can produce anything that's glass. That's pretty good. But other than that, it could actually be very damaging in the sense of fighting, where he could produce multiple little shards of glass and fly them out at people. Not only that, actually producing molten glass using that friction ability, which would take a while to actually heat up because glasses melt, well, silicon or glasses ability melting point is rather high, so he'd have to do that for a while or increase the velocity on which he's spinning it around and rubbing against each other to actually produce that amount of heat. But he could throw molten glass at people. This would go hand in hand with just burning his opponents and producing some form of fire or friction, molten metal. Molten glass would bloody hurt if it touched you, so I wouldn't recommend doing that at home to see, oh, it wouldn't hurt. It would bloody cane. But other than that, he can actually protect himself from electrical attacks somewhat to a valued point. Low-level electrical attacks will not actually hurt him, as silicon is mainly used within producing circuit boards, and this is because of its electrical resistance in order to actually produce the circuit, to actually help the tracks in which the circuit board is actually flowing the actual electricity through, and the silicon base is just to keep it on there because the electricity will not go off and pass through it. So low-level electrical abilities he could actually protect himself with just by his sand. This is a great way in order to actually protect himself from Eneru, even if it's at a low tier level. But other than that, if you increase the voltage or the heat, you definitely could hurt him. It just depends on the amount of power output you're actually producing against his actual abilities. So low-level electrical abilities he could negate very easily. I did some thinking, and this may be a bit of fan theory, but if he has the moisture draining ability as well as his devil fruit, I thought I'd add that in there. So I wanted to ponder the question, could he theoretically drain the sea? Now, we've seen him actually drain moisture from a lot of things, it mainly has been just fresh water. But I was thinking, why couldn't he actually drain the sea? Now, there are multiple ways that he could actually drain the sea, but I'm guessing that he can't because of the sea stone and or salt within the actual ocean. If he has no problem of draining the fresh water away, which was like the oases in Yuba or just water in general, which is just clean fresh water, then he could seriously just drain the amount of the sea. Now, obviously, I know the sea has a lot of volume, but there seems to be no limit on how much water he can absorb. This is a great way in order to just destroy the entire world if you really wanted to. and or I think it would probably mean that is the salt in the sea, which would negate him from doing so. So I thought I'd add this in at the end because I wanted to just talk about that at the same time. Other than that, guys, what do you think on the sand fruit? Did you like the video? What did you think? Other than that, guys, have a lovely rest of the day, and I shall see you on the next video on Saturday. Take it easy, guys.